distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the press. First of all, I'd like to thank the CITN for giving me this opportunity to share a few ideas on this very important topic. The issue before us is that how do we change the culture of tax payments or the level of compliance in a developing economy? A lot of people say that we have existing laws that we have on our books, laws that were either inherited by the British or the colonial masters. And basically in those laws, though not really as dynamic as we'd like them to be, covers basic tax administration. But you'll find out that tax, they say, is all about law. But when you're in a developing country, the question I'll ask you is that how many businesses can you close down? How many individuals can you prosecute? Because we have to go through a process, through a period. The developed countries who have a very high level of tax compliance, some reaching 99%, went through a process, went through a journey. Before we were colonized, we had our traditional kings and rulers, and they also ran a tax system that was close to 100% compliant. Because during that time, if you didn't pay what is considered tax to the king or to the emir, you had the opportunity of losing your head. So we had no choice than to be compliant. And during the era of the military and the oil boom in the 70s, where a head of state said, money is not our problem, but how to spend it, there was really no need for taxation. And that has also transformed within the civilian government. If you ask a lot of governors now who are about to run for re-election, or new governors who are coming out to run for election, and you talk to them about tax, they'll ask you a question: do you want me to win the next election or not? That is what is foremost in their mind. I remember there was a minister who came to Lagos under not this government, under the previous government, and said he was going to abolish taxation. And I wondered, he's not even running for office, but just to get on the good side, in quote, of a certain individuals or society, he wanted to abolish taxation. So the question is that, do we understand the relevance of taxation? Why do we have to pay tax? What comes first, the chicken or the egg? So basically, when we're looking at the entrenchment of a culture of paying tax, that implies that it should be voluntary, that on our own, we should be able to come forward and pay what is due to government. In the FIRS, we had a system where we introduced self-assessment. And when we decided that we will check on the self-assessment done, both for multinationals and also for domestic, I'll call it domestic, local companies. Out of the first 200 national audits that we did, not one was compliant. So the question is, can we presently rely on self-assessment? And the answer is no. And why is the answer no? Because there's that culture that is not there. Some people will tell you that it's because there are no consequences. That is why people decide not to be truthful. If the words, I'll choose my words very carefully, but we're all professionals here, and we all have to play a role. And the question is that some of our members here, President, act as tax consultants, advisors to corporate Nigeria. What role do you play? Now, after asking ourselves what role each of us play, how do we try and change the culture? Number one, in a society where people believe that they provide their own water, provide their own security, some even go as far as saying, I even paved the road in front of my house. And so they say they provide their own infrastructure. Well, if you did pave the road, or you leveled the road in front of your house, you did it for your own personal benefit and convenience. When you pay tax, You don't pay it only for your own personal convenience or benefit. You pay tax for the benefit and convenience of everyone within that society. So the first step, and I'm going to refer to some issues that the FOWLER'S has introduced, and also I'd like to make here to all present. We have shared these innovations with the state boards of internal revenue, and of course we have told them that we will assist them free of charge. We'll give them even software free of charge to help them to do exactly what we're doing in terms of the ease of tax payment. We even went a step further in that we donated free of charge computer systems and software to all states in the Federation to help them to remit their withholding tax and their VAT and even deduct pay tax of their workers. So basically what we're trying to do here is to build a tax system that is not only effective at the federal level, but also at the state level. So the first thing that we have to look at is the ease of paying taxes. First of all, we have to make it easy and convenient. A person who even goes to the bank and has to wait for 10 or 15 minutes finds that journey unpleasant. So if you have a transaction for your own benefit and you're thinking, okay, what day will I go to the bank for yourself? And you believe you're going to spend more than 15 minutes, you most likely will shift it to a time when it's convenient for you. Talk less of the payment of tax. Everybody knows that nobody likes to pay tax. Even the tax administrator doesn't want to pay tax either. So the question is that we have to make it as convenient as possible. Second, we have to make it attractive. And how can we make it attractive? When the government of your state or the federal government or the organizations that collect taxes can tell the people and show them a road that has been built, a hospital, a school that has been built for the public good, that makes the payment of taxes very attractive. In the Joint Tax Board, we go around to various states and we look at projects that tax payments or tax revenue has been used for. And I'll mention a few. We went to Sokoto State, and of course, you know these are not paid commercials. We as tax administrators are non-political. And I saw what the governor was doing in terms of school buildings. It was impressive. The government school buildings that they were putting up, they rated first class. And I asked him, I said, which students are you building these schools for? And he said, for the students who can't afford private education. We went to Osun State also, Oshogbo, and we saw a similar thing. They were putting up school buildings that will rival, I can even say, rival the buildings that they use in universities for those who can't afford private educations. And we spoke to the people on the street, both in Sokoto and in Osun State. And we asked them, just at random, have you paid your tax? And they were happy to say they paid their tax. And we asked them, why are you paying your tax? And by coincidence, we're just on a new road that had just been tarred. He said, because of this road and because of the schools that the governor had put up. So that social contract has to be in place. Because in changing a culture, you have to present something. Because the question I'll ask, how many jails do we have? How many businesses can we afford to close down? Next is social. I'll ask everyone here, how many of you have engaged a domestic staff? How many of you have engaged a driver? How many of you have spoken to those staff on the benefit of tax payment? Now, considering that you pay cash, you pay them directly. And I'm sure that most people here will pay on an average between the driver, the domestic help, the megad, or whatever. Even if you are Ijebu, you pay them at least 10,000 naira per month. And then for those who are not Ijebu, might even go up to 40 or 50. How many of you have explained to them that out of this 50,000 naira, and you're going to pay tax of 2,500 per year, not per month, just to introduce them to the payment of tax? Because the issue of tax payment has to be on the numbers. So we have to start that process here, and we have to start that process with even those who are classified as low income, and then build up. We'll get to the high net worth, and I think the VADES issue, we'll get there. There was a program that we ran in the FIRS, and we looked at all corporate names or organizations that had properties, first of all in FCT, that had not filed any tax returns. Surprisingly, we had, I'll give you estimate figures so that you won't be alarmed. We had over 2,000 properties and plots of land registered and owned by corporate names that had not paid any taxes. We found out that some of those corporate names were shell companies, just used for the purpose of development, of building a structure, and without filing returns. Now, unknown to them, in our law, when you don't file returns, we can use your turnover to assess you for tax. In terms of total value in FCT alone, it was in excess of 3 trillion naira. And we're doing the same exercise all over the country. We've concluded in Lagos State. Kano State is nearly ready. We're about to start in Oyo State. So for those who don't declare under VADES, we're still on our way. Timely. This has to do with both the payment and the ability for tax administrators to give a taxpayer information timely. The only way you can improve your tax system is through technology. Any individual or any corporate organization who cannot touch a button and see a history of tax payment is not likely to be more inclined to make the next payment. What did we do in FIRS? We launched 6 solutions. Now, with your tax ID, anytime a tax payment is made on that tax ID, you get an email alert. You can download your receipt yourself. You can confirm the genuinity of that receipt with a smartphone. And we have offered this solution to all the state internal revenue services. A lot of people had problems of withholding tax credit notes or credit notes. We have now put into the system all payments from 2012 to date, so that if you had a credit note, instead of you going through the manual process, at the touch of a button, you can print out your credit notes. So if you did a job for a state government or you did a job for an organization that withheld your withholding tax, and they're supposed to remit it the next month, within 45 days, you know whether that money has been remitted on your behalf or not. And of course, that is part of your money when you're filing your returns. Now, what other measures can we introduce? First of all, usually people will have or face stringent financial penalties. But what are the penalties that we have currently in our law books? You'll be surprised. But if you apart from the interest and penalty for late payment, if you default on your remittance of VAT, the maximum, I believe, you can be charged is 30,000 naira. So, as a businessman, if I'm owing 1 billion in VAT, and some organizations owe that amount, and I decide I should keep it for 6 months or keep it for 12 months until the next audit happens, what is the penalty? What's the financial penalty? But you see, there are other ways that we can do it. We can also charge you for theft, because to collect VAT and not remit it is not borrowing, it's theft. The withholding tax that you deduct, that you do not remit, belongs to somebody else. So basically, within our system, we will start to use other means and methods to ensure that the penalties will also encourage a change in culture. I was talking to some Canadians and Americans, and we spoke about the level of compliance. And we just spoke jokingly. And I said, you guys, why are you all so concerned about filing your tax returns? They did mention because the country provides services. The first thing they said, because of the consequences. I met a Canadian who was going back to Canada, and that person had bought a watch here, had received a brand new watch. And the person said, I'm leaving the box with a friend of mine. And that, to me, was very strange. Someone gave you, or you bought a brand new expensive watch, you're putting on the watch and you're leaving the box with a friend. And I asked the person, why are you leaving the box with your friend? They said that when I get back to Canada, if I appear with that new box in my suitcase and they see that new box in my suitcase, they'll ask me, when did I buy it? How much was it? And they'll look at my income and see if I've declared that additional income. They go that far. So when we're talking about other developed countries providing all services, or when a cat is stuck in a tree, you first of all say a police car to direct traffic, you say a fire engine with a ladder to go up to the tree to bring down the cat, then you see an ambulance on standby. It's because they have the ability to provide those facilities. And it's time that we all join hands and change this culture. Another step would be imprisonment for defaulters. At least as far as I know, my elders are here, the doyens of taxation, etc. I don't know of any one single individual that has been jailed for tax evasion or tax theft. Let me use that word. It is time that we change this approach. I know during my time in Lagos, when we chased some high net worth individuals, all we simply did, after writing them various letters, we charged them for falsification of financial information, and we invited them to come and make police statements. 99% of all of them made a payment. They either sent a lawyer or they declared and made a payment. And I think that we as tax administrators have to start taking that step. We also spoke to the CITN then, because some of our members were advisors, consultants to some of these corporate organizations. That is not a good thing for a member to be involved in incorrect returns, let me use that word. And that is the message I preach when I'm talking to those, I'll say, on the other side, because we have to share the same vision. The other thing that we can do, we can seal up business premises of defaulters. But to me, that is the last step. Because if I seal up your business and you're not operational, then you're not making money. If you're not making money, you can't pay me tax. So our job is also being the job of a doctor, to make sure that the economy is healthy, to make sure that the businesses are producing, so they can provide the employment, so that the state can get payee tax, the federal can get corporate income tax, and the whole economy will start to bubble. Now, if we look at Nigeria, the case for Nigeria, I have a few items here, but I think the Vice President clearly spoke about the need and the case for Nigeria. Clearly, the United Nations the IMF, OECD, and the World Bank had a meeting at the UN in February of this year. And from all their information, they said any country whose tax revenue to GDP is below 15% is not likely to be able to fund sustainable and economic development. Nigeria certainly falls in that category at 6%. We looked at our figures for last year. There's an improvement, but we're still waiting for they call it Statistics General, to do a confirmation. I'm sure maybe we're now between 8 to 9%, but we're waiting for that confirmation. But we're still not where we're supposed to be. But like the Vice President said, 2020, we're looking at 15%. But I think that if we join hands together and do what we can do, we should be able to do 20% in 1919. And I think that's the challenge for you and I here. I have a slide here that shows the average tax to GDP. The OECD countries on an average is 34%. Brazil, 12.8%. South Africa, about 27%. India, which is said to be, in quotes, a developing poor nation, is 16%. It's time that we change this. Now, what has the country done to try and change the culture and the attitude and the level of compliance? We have a national tax policy that was chaired by a professor. Professor Sani, I'm sure is he here? If we could just give him a round of applause. And he came from the private sector. And we had also tax administrators at the federal and state levels, and other individuals. And we had Mr. Is it Oyewale? Sorry? Oyedele, my good brother. Where is he? Is he here? Please, let's give him a round of applause also. And they came and shared their experience to put together a document that we can all work with. And we believe with this new document, it will also be tax-friendly to the taxpayer, but at the same time ensure that the country gets the desired revenue to make sure that Nigeria becomes great again. Now, in terms of tax operations, what have we done at the Federal Inland Revenue Service? And I said that we have also made this available to the states. We first of all have to provide effective, convenient service to all taxpayers. We first of all changed the orientation of our staff. And there's one word here that I'd like to use: stewardship. We let the taxpayers know that we're here to serve them, and that whatever we collect, whatever we do, it is to their benefit. So in rolling out the e-solutions, we rolled out an e-solution for company registration, for e-filing, and for those who are afraid of computers. And when I say afraid of computers, they're not sure. We have placed 2 computers in every station. So if you want to do e-filing on your returns, you can come into our station and somebody will take you through the process and let you use those systems to do your e-filing. We have done e-tax payment. Now you can pay your taxes or any tax 24/7 anywhere in the world on your phone, on your computer, with any banking application. And also download that receipt immediately that payment is made. E-stamp duty, e-withholding tax credit notes, and even the tax clearance certificate can all be done online. We've also restructured the refund process. Now, in terms of actual numbers, based on our tax numbers, those who requests for refunds are less than 0.001. Because in a country where your level of compliance is low, equally the number asking for a tax refund for overpayment will equally be very low. But as low as it is, we found out that it is important that if by error, if by miscalculation, you make an overpayment, you should be able to get your tax refund. We met with the Minister of Finance, and she made a presentation at FAC. And I can tell you that every month we receive at least 2 billion naira to treat cases of tax refund. Thereby, I can safely say that apart from one or two construction companies that had large arrears, within 60 days, if an error is made and you make an application, you will get your tax refund back. A policy of catch them young. We're aware that a lot of adults were present during the Gowon era, where they didn't have to pay tax, where people did whatever they wanted to do. During the period in the 1980s, 1981, 82, thereabouts, when 1 naira was the equivalent of $1.15 US, life was different. And so we had a generation that grew up without understanding the importance of tax payments. So what would they tell their children when it comes to tax? Nothing. We're an oil-rich company. Why pay tax? So we're trying to change that orientation. And we've introduced a comic book on taxation that we give out free to school children. And at this point, I'd like to congratulate Caleb University and the chairman of this session, who I believe is a professor of taxation in that university, the first university in Nigeria that offers a Bachelor's of Science program in taxation and also a master's. I will send my bill for that advert later. Relationship Management Unit. In banking, what is the success of a bank? They handle relationships properly. We as tax administrators have to see tax administration as a business. So we have a relationship management unit, which basically looks after certain business sectors. And until there's a case of default, that relationship manager is on the side of the taxpayer. If that taxpayer that he handles the relationship has any complaints, that relationship manager will sort that problem out. Now, if during that course of the relationship, we find out that the taxpayer is being dodgy, then of course, the relationship changes. So the whole idea is that we should provide service like a business to make that taxpayer want to come and have a discussion. Although with our e-solutions right now, you do not have to come to any FIRS office. You can do all your tax transactions and activities online. But still, there's some people that like that personal interrelationship. We have to have an effective audit process. Like I said in my introduction, the first 200 national audits we did, not one company was compliant, and that cut across all sectors of the economy. We also launched the Federal Engagement and Enlightenment Tax Teams. They go out every day just to discuss with taxpayers, to educate them, to give them forms, and based on our MOU with the state revenue boards, we also have forms to register individuals that eventually go to the state boards. Like I said, we have a joint relationship. Arbitration. We have the Tax Appeal Tribunal, which is going to be reconstituted shortly. But even during that process, we said that there's some cases that with dialogue, we can clear. And we have been meeting with taxpayers who have cases in courts. We've been meeting with taxpayers who had issues with the Tax Appeal Tribunal. And I can tell you today that out of all those that we met, we were able to resolve those issues. And I'd like to also thank again Professor Yomisani, because we sometimes invite him as an objective eye at some of those meetings. And after the discussion, all the meetings we've had, we've been able to resolve all those cases out of court and out of the tax appeal tribunal. When it comes to VAT, our level of compliance in Nigeria is terrible. I can only use that word, it's terrible. By law, VAT collected should be remitted by the 21st of the following month. We found out that a lot of organizations collect VAT and don't remit. And in collecting that VAT, they're cheating you and I and cheating the society. They're cheating you, first of all, for overcharging by charging you VAT, cheating society by not remitting it. So what have we done? We put in place technology to make the collection and remittance of VAT automatic. We've done that with aviation, we've done that with power, and we're going around trying to make sure that all the sectors have that. But there's an important role that you and I have to play. We have to insist that when we pay VAT, that VAT is remitted. Just do a sample run. Look at some companies, for example, and ask them whether they're registered, whether they even have a tax ID. Because if you don't have a tax ID, there's no way you can even remit the VAT you collect. So we're going manual and also with technology. Very soon we're going to be giving out certificates that will be displayed in all places of business to show that that business has a tax ID and is registered to collect VAT and remit the same. We also, like I said, are not unmindful of the culture of the taxpayer. So we designed what we call a non-compliance sticker. For those, you can call it the first warning. For those who are registered and not remitting, for those who are not registered taxpayers and not remitting. So after we discuss with and dialogue with them, and after 2 weeks where there's no action from them, we stick up a non-compliance sticker on their place of business, which simply says that this business has defaulted in its tax obligations. And we'll now leave and see whether people will still patronize that business. We found out that over a period of 12 months last year, we stock up 15,000 of those stickers across the nation. And we were able to collect 35 billion just from sticking up those stickers. But at the same time, the good thing about it was that some of them came in and actually admitted that they were embarrassed by their clients. That when their clients got there and read that sticker, they refused to do business with them. And I think that's a good sign, and we should pursue that. To make any business that's not tax compliant not our friend, we should tell them that they're doing the wrong thing. The next slide I have is just basically a 3-year collection trend analysis, oil tax revenue and non-oil tax revenue. The Vice President highlighted this point. I can safely say now that the non-oil tax revenue is in excess of 65% of total revenue generated by FIRS, and I think that is the direction we should keep on heading. We should be able to reach a point where the non-tax revenue accounts for at least 80% of all the revenue generated. In conclusion, I believe that with these little changes and a little mindset change, and I'll say the same thing that I said in Ghana. I'd said this sometime when I was in Lagos. We went to Lastut, a hospital. And at that point in time, I think this was about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, the death rate, mortality rate of children under 5 was alarming. And what was the cause? Very simple, malaria. So when we went on this tour, a joint tax board tour, I asked one of the doctors and nurses that, what are you doing about this high mortality rate from malaria. And she said, we are trying our best, sir, but the parents bring in the children too late. So I said, what do you mean? They said that by the time these children are brought to hospital, they're as hot as an oven. So I said, you mean they can't find malaria medicine? And the nurse said, yes, that the malaria medicine that would have saved that child's life is less than 2,000 naira. But that family, some through prayers, some through sponging down, some through hope, will think that that fever will break. So instead of spending 2,000 naira for malaria medicine, that child will pass. And I felt very bad as an individual when I heard that the Clinton Foundation was the one supplying free mosquito nets to Nigeria. It shouldn't be the case. We should be our brother's keeper. I want to give the same example when I had a presentation in Ghana, my good friends, and I gave them the example of when trying to encourage tax payment. I said, if you know that your payment of 2,000 naira, which is equivalent, I don't know what the equivalent is in Ghana cedis, but 2,000 naira could save a life. Maybe that's a start. And I think that is what we have to preach as tax administrators, not only to ourselves, but to everybody, from your driver to your migad to your domestic staff, and let's make Nigeria great again. Thank you.